All right, guys. Happy Friday! Excited to have our next guest speaker on the Clear Channel today. If this is your first time joining us, either live, I see there's some people in the audience that are watching. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, please subscribe. Please share the channel with others. Our whole purpose is to help change the world one leader at a time. And I am pumped to speak to my friend Holly today. Holly, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Holly, can you just for context, where do you live? Where did you grow up? To tell a bit about background about Holly
Yeah.
before we get into maybe a bit about career and career success.
Yeah. I actually grew up in Idaho in a small town of like 35,000 people. It's a fun fact. I grew up where Evil Knievel tried to jump the Snake River Canyon like years ago, and the ramp is still there, like the dirt ramp's still there. Um, and grew up, in a town of 35,000 people and everything that comes with that. So like my dad was like the big honcho, being the fire chief of the town, and my mom worked at a dental office, like um played softball in high school, and knew very from a very young age that I wanted to get out of there very quickly, and left, came back. I moved back out here when I back in 2014. I realized that I really love the outdoors and the mountains and all of that stuff. So I moved back to Boise, Idaho, which is where I live now, and moved my company out here. I expanded it out here and just moved another branch of it out here. But yeah, wanted to raise my kid around all the outdoor stuff. Yeah,
I love it.
that's me.
I love it. So speaking of family, so your mom, you said dentist, dad, a part of the fire chief side of things. Like, how was it in the household? Obviously, you're an entrepreneur, so
Yeah,
not so much kind of what you saw growing up. Tell me
yeah,
about just what they maybe any philosophies they shared with you, things that you
yeah.
embody today.
My mom wasn't even a dentist. She just worked at the dental office. She was a dental assistant slash hygienist. So my dad, I watched him go from like the bottom ranks for a fireman is hosman, and I watched him work his way up through to fire chief. And when he got promoted to chief, he set like a national record for getting promoted, and it took him 15 years to do it because everything is so there's no merit based; it's all seniority based. And as he went through the ranks, he would bring home work a lot with him, and he would talk to about I want to promote so and so, but I can't because they haven't been at the position long enough to even qualify for the test. So therefore, I have to promote this person, and here's what it's going to do to the department. And and I remember thinking like, I'm so confused because aren't you the boss? Like I didn't really like I didn't understand it. And then on the other side of it, I played high level softball where everything was merit based. If I could just work hard enough for long enough and outwork the girl that had the mound, I could take the mound from her. And so I had these two like polarizations in my world. Now the other thing was, as my dad was going through the ranks, he worked a 24 on, 48 off shift. So we worked 10 days a month. My dad was the only fireman that did not have a second job on the side. So he worked
Wow.
minimal and played a lot. Like he flew Cessnas for fun and did all the out west kind of stuff that you hear about. Actually, he played a lot. And so I was raised to think work the minimal amount of time and make the most amount of money possible. But then growing up, money was a huge part of our world that we couldn't afford it. My dad got paid once a month, so it was, it's the first of the month and we're already broke, which I feel like is a rap song. What was that from? Like Friday? It's first of the month, whatever movie it was. It was always like we're in the hole and we're trying to catch up. And he would like say, oh, so and so got a new truck or so and so bought a new house. But again, he was the only person that didn't have a job on his days off. And so somehow in my brain, and then my mom needed my dad's income. And so somehow in my brain, I made a decision early on that I wanted to be in control of where I went in my career, like I was able to do on the softball field. And I never, ever wanted money to be a factor in my life because I watched what it did to my parents' marriage. I watched what it did to my parents' friends' marriage. and I watched what it did to my relationship with my parents. And I was willing, instead of playing a lot and working minimal, I was willing to work a lot to be able to play a lot. And that's what that environment did for me. I never thought about owning a company. I knew two entrepreneurs growing up. One of them was one of my softball coaches when I was younger, and he owned a drywall business. Obviously, that I wasn't going to go that direction. My aunt got her master's degree in teaching, and then moved up to Alaska and became a real estate broker. And she was like the one who had made it in my family. And so I was like, all right, get a high level education, do something big. And I was lucky enough to be around entrepreneurs that guided me in that direction, but it never crossed my mind to own a business. I just wanted to kick ass.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of education, tell us about you obviously grew up out west, but
Yeah.
you went to school in Maryland. From what I remember, right?
For undergrad. Yeah. Yeah. For undergrad, I got the opportunity to play softball at Maryland. So I was like, get me as far away from Idaho as possible. I was lucky enough. My parents sent me to Europe for the summer when I was younger, early high school. And I was like, I want to travel. And I was taught early on, go see the world, kid. It's not this big. So I wanted to get as far away as I could. So I went to University of Maryland. After that, there's an ocean. Got an opportunity to play ball. I pitched, and then 2 years later, everywhere there's a military base overseas, there's a University of Maryland. So I got the job working with Maryland, providing active duty military members and their significant others the opportunity to get their degrees while they were overseas, which I thought was super, super cool. And I moved over to Sicily, where I finished my undergrad with Maryland. I have a dual bachelor's in business and psychology. And then I stayed over there for 5 years, like traveling around, doing all the stuff. And then again, let's go back to get a high education. So I came back to the States. I couldn't get the degree I wanted to. And I went to University of New Haven, where I got my master's in organizational psychology.
So you have your master's.
Mm-hmm.
After 4.5 years of a good time at Penn State, I said to myself, I don't want to be in school anymore. Like, I don't want to do this. I want to work. I want to make money. And you go on to get your master's. Tell me about, has that served you in your career? I mean, organizational psychology, as a leader of a business now, an entrepreneur, I'm sure you deal with a lot of people.
Yeah.
That the psychology background comes into play. Tell us about that. I'm curious. I didn't even realize that was what you had studied.
Yeah. I don't think that my degree has aided in my success, but I think what it definitely did was anything that I learned early on in my career with, the development of teams and people and team interactions and making people feel like a contributor to our company culture, all of that stuff. I had learned it. So anything that I was learning, I was like, oh, I learned that in my textbook. So it just added a lot of validity to anything that I was learning early on in my career, where I didn't question it because I was hearing it for a second time, and I purposely went to University of New Haven, where it was a program. I did a practicum. So I had already practiced some of the stuff. But yeah, I think if my son said, and we're actually going on a college recruiting trip today, when you and I hang up, I'm headed to the airport. We're going out to North Carolina. I have some company locations out there. So we're going to do a company thing. And then he plays lacrosse. He wants to go to Maryland. But there's University of North Carolina took number one in 2016. And there's a couple of other lacrosse schools out there, but there's a showcase where a lot of the recruiters are coming. So, which is crazy that I'm at that point in my life right now. But if he said to me, Mom, should I get a master's degree? I would say, if you want. I ended up with $120,000 in debt I had to pay off. And if I had to do it again, I would have started my career earlier. But I do believe that you find things when you're ready for them. And I don't know that I would have been ready before grad school.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's interesting you say that, right? So it's so often people, I think, young in their careers, because they are unfamiliar, unaware of some of the philosophies or the practices of what it takes to lead and to manage, they sometimes question, how
Yeah.
things are done. But it sounds like because you'd studied it first, you read about it, you were tested on it, then when you fell into your career and you started learning how to develop teams and sales, you were like, oh yeah, this is the second time I've seen this. So it just made sense.
Yeah, you know it's so funny because you've been sending me pictures of the boys, which I love to see them. I appreciate it. But my
Yeah.
my son has only known his dad and I. We both have businesses, and that's all he's ever known. He's been a big part. He's been a big part of both of our companies. And then his best buddy, his dad, is an entrepreneur. And to sit and listen to them, because colleges are being talked about and stuff like that right now, and to sit and listen to them, the corporate world is what they question. Why would
Yeah.
they're questioning all that world? You know what I mean? And so it's really interesting. The environment in which you're raised really can determine the way you go. But I do think it's important to look at all things from a bigger scope and then make your decisions about what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I love your story about getting started in sales, right? So you were driving from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you I think got stuck in St. Louis or something. So do you mind sharing that? That's just such
Yeah.
an interesting, unique way that you found your first job.
I had just finished grad school in Connecticut. Connecticut and Idaho are 4 days, a 4 day drive. And I was on the phone with one of my friends. I had a couple of job offers working at consulting firms, which is exactly what I went to school for. They were like the dream job for me when I went into grad school. I was super excited to get them. And for some reason, I mean, I could go into it, but I just like the jobs weren't settling with me. Um, I know why and I don't know why at the same time, And so
It didn't hit
uh,
your heart.
yeah, there was something in my gut,
There's something here that was telling you it was misaligned. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't have the autonomy that I really wanted. I actually got into real estate when I was in grad school, and I loved the autonomy behind it. I found out later it was way cooler to be the investor than the agent, but um,
Yeah. You've
but
done a few of those deals too, huh? I know what
uh,
you're talking about.
I was on the phone with my friend who was living in St. Louis, and I was like, Amy, I have these two job offers. I don't know what I want to do. She goes, just drive to Idaho, go spend some time with your family. Since I graduated, I left at 19 years old, and and I didn't come back. Like I had not come back to Idaho. So 2 years in undergrad in the States, 5 years over in Europe, 18 months in grad school. I got my undergrad and my grad faster than you're supposed to. And I hung up the phone and I left my roommate a note and said, I'm leaving for Idaho. I don't know when I'm going to be back. And here's some rent money. And 30 minutes later, I was on the road. I remember there's like rolling hills in Connecticut, and there's like this big storm coming in over the hill and I'm like driving towards it. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, is this a sign? Should I turn around? I was like, no, just keep driving, like movie status, some rom-com or something. And I drove all the way through to St. Louis and stopped and visited my friend. I literally needed to wait a week because my check needed to come through. So I had enough gas money to get to Idaho. And I decided to see what St. Louis had to offer for the job market. I knew, again, I wanted a high level autonomy. I knew I really wanted to kick ass and be something big. And I knew I actually wanted to get back overseas. And Anheuser-Busch is a big employer in St. Louis. So my thought was get in with them, get in their HR department with my degree, and then get back overseas. And I didn't qualify for anything except for like walking around giving Anheuser-Busch products out at bars and stuff. But I ended up applying to a sales company and marketing company. And I liked studying that stuff in undergrad. I had zero experience. I'm a massive introvert. But I went in for an interview because my friends were at work. I didn't have anything to do. And I really liked the person that I did an interview with, and the company had a great energy. And for me, I don't know about you, but I grew up with my parents saying, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. I'm dreading this. I'm dreading that. And I had studied the opposite of that in grad school. So I knew it could exist. I needed maybe to create it, but I knew it could exist. And I found it at the
Sure.
company. And so I decided to start and check it out. And here we are 15 years later.
Crazy, right? And so
Yeah.
you start off in the sales, obviously in our industry, and you interviewed with Rebby, right? Obviously, is one of our partners in the business. How old was Rebby when she did your interview?
24, 25. She was a little bit younger than me.
Okay.
I was 26, so 24 or 25.
And she owned that market, that location, right? She was the owner of the business.
For 9 months.
Uh,
Yeah. I think I started when she had opened 9 months before, I think.
so relatively new
Yeah.
entrepreneur, new owner.
Yeah.
And so what was it you saw in her, right? Because someone who, you have all these consulting companies that are, big
Yeah.
names, big brands, and you start with your awesome background in a small sales or in a brand new location.
Yeah.
What was it that got you? What got you connected?
Yeah. She walked out and she looked happy. She was wearing a black suit with a t-shirt underneath it because that was the style back then, like on Hitch, and it said I heart, and it either said like New York or Australia. And she wasn't stuffy, but she looked professional. She was super organized, and I don't remember anything that she said to me except for she was asking me about my time in Europe. And what that meant to me was she wanted to connect with me. And I remember her saying she had an Italian background and all of that stuff. And I was invited in for an additional interview for the next day. And I remember sitting in the lobby, and there were people walking around, and they were professional, and you could see that they were ambitious and they were happy with where they were working. And it was just a bunch of people that were getting started on their career. You could see it. And I liked the energy. I just really did. There were records to be broken. I get really bored really easy. As an athlete, I'm sure that you love that too. Like, give me a record. Wait a minute. I can do this as fast as I want. Nothing can hold me back. And then my very first day, she went over the opportunity as a whole. She spent a couple of hours. She actually asked me to come in a little bit early for my first day. And the straight employee that I was like, wait a minute. I got to go in a little bit early on my first day. Like, this might be too much. And I think it was like 15 minutes, right? But she went over the whole thing, and you were pretty established in your career at that point, actually. And you were talked about in this meeting and how quickly you had progressed your career. And I made the decision that day that I was going to compete with you. And I've never told you that story.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was like, all right. And then I met you later on, and I was like, all right, this is the guy I've been chasing. Like, yeah.
Wow.
From day one, your name was the one I was going after.
That's funny.
I haven't caught you yet, but I'm still coming.
Get
over your shoulder, Ken.
I know. It's like, where's she at?
When you feel like you're being watched, it's me.
It's true. So tell me about so you get started in sales. You obviously learn about the growth of the business, the potential. What's one thing as you're going along the training program that you had to really lean into that was uncomfortable, that was frustrating, that you had to change? Maybe something you had to look in the mirror and you had to make some like personal changes.
So much. I remember being 5 years into like owning my company, and I did this big company event. In my whole career, probably a lot of my life, I had heard, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I'm like, "Nothing. What are you talking about? Like, what's wrong?" And one of the girls that came to this company event, I'll never forget it. We're like up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere in Idaho. I rented out the whole town. And she goes, I was talking to her about this. She said, because she felt the same way. And she goes, "It's just because you have your mound face." Again, I was a pitcher. She goes, I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And she goes, "Well, we never walked out onto the mound and like smiled and waved at the crowd and was like, hey, we're getting ready to have a good time, right? It looked like we wanted to kill somebody." And so when you take a highly, highly competitive person like myself and an introvert and someone who's really shy And I'm in competitive mode because I've always taken my career and what I do really seriously. My face often looked like I wanted to kill somebody, which in turn caused a problem in relationships where I was like scary, intimidating, all of this stuff. And when it's funny because every inch of my soul only wants to help people succeed. And if they don't feel like they can come to me in those ways, or I'm scary or intimidating, it can create a gap that I don't get to help them as much as possible. And so to this day, I do weekly work on it. I do a ton of work on it. And I spend a lot of money on therapy trying to teach me how to get over it, you know? But I think I've worked a lot on it. But you can
That's
only
awesome.
help people if they feel comfortable around you. And that's what I had to work on.
That's awesome. Yeah, and good for you leaning into it, right? And seeking guidance and seeking advice and being a humble student of others, right?
Thanks.
Now,
Thanks.
something I know about you that again, keep me honest here.
Hmm.
The week you opened your business, you also
2 months
gave
after.
birth.
2 months
Two
after.
months. Okay, so 2 months after you opened your business, you gave birth.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yes.
I
Exactly
have
2 months.
children. I have children, and I also know the last couple months of a pregnancy, I was just trying to avoid my wife because it was, get this thing out of me, kind of conversations.
Yeah.
The alien is growing. So, how did you do it? Like you're starting a company, you have people responsible for, you're about to have your son.
Yeah.
Like
You know,
what?
okay, let me ask you this. Did you ever get hurt in soccer?
Yeah. I used to
Did
turn
you
my ankle pretty often.
did you keep playing?
Oh yeah.
Why? How'd you do it? Weren't you in constant pain? You know?
Yeah.
Um, but it never crossed your mind not to play, right?
Hmm.
I remember my high school like stay in shape sport was volleyball. First practice, I'd go up for a jump set, come down. I tore my tendons and ligaments so bad, every single one of them, that I ripped bone off my ankle. And the doctor goes, "All right, you can either have the surgery now or tape up and play the rest of the season." This wasn't even my sport. This was my stay in shape sport. The hell did I do? I taped up, right? And so when it's something that's like, I was like starting a company. Like I had people that chose to work with me. I had 10 people at the time. I opened my business with 10 people. And they needed me and they were relying on me. And it like, I can't even remember it now, funny enough, but it just never crossed my mind. But I will tell you this, I do believe it was the best thing that ever happened in my career because I had to get my business ready to run without me there because I didn't know how long I was going to be out. Thank God I did because I ended up having a C-section that didn't go very well. I couldn't even leave my house for 3 weeks. I couldn't go back for 6 weeks. And and so I've always ran a training and development machine because I had to learn how to do that in my first 8 weeks of being open. And so I don't know. I'm like, I hear people all the time. I get these calls all the time. How did you start your career? And like the really hard part when you were pregnant and having the kid and stuff. And I'm just like, it never like women do it all the time. Like it's not like you get pregnant and you quit your career or well, I mean some people do and to each his own, but I just never crossed my mind to do anything other than that. But again, it ended up being the biggest gift that was given to me.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh man, that's awesome. So tell us now your business and numerous years, $1 million+ Your organization does tens of millions of dollars a year in business. Looking back, what are some neat things that you've done because you chose this bit of an unconventional route, going the entrepreneur route in industry, stopping in St. Louis, doing a job that wasn't a big brand, What are some
Yeah.
fun things that you've done?
So much easier to answer with my planner in front of me, by the way. Most recently, I go to Alaska every July. It's where my husband and I got married. We do this big, long, like week-long fishing trip. I love to provide people experiences. Like that's the thing I love to do. So I took a couple people from my company. We went up to Alaska for a week. I went to you just got back from the Olympics. I went to 2012 Olympics in London, like VIP style, where it's like, you don't have to walk through security and you're staying in the flat above the Olympic athletes, sitting on my bed, looking over Buckingham Palace's wall, literally looking over it. Meeting KD on the street. He was riding in a rickshaw. I have done the private islands off of Costa Rica with a private chef, with the private catamaran that takes you there. My very first year in business, I stuffed my dad's stocking with a bunch of $100 bills, bought him a brand new Navigator. I think one of the coolest things that I've ever done is raised my son around highly ambitious people. I would give away all of the commas in all of my bank accounts for that. He is far above his peers, I think, because of who I've been able to surround him with his whole life. And the way he thinks is very, very valuable, I think, for his future. What are some of the other cool things my mom was on payroll for a very long time. I think one of the coolest things, and again, let's remind you, when I went back to my childhood of money was always an issue, is I don't have to worry about stuff anymore. And I get to make decisions based off of what I want to do versus what I can do, which is very important to me because autonomy is very important. I surprised my husband for his 40th birthday, took him to Ireland. He's Irish. Went back to the village that his family is from. He didn't even know he was going anywhere until we showed up at the airport, and then I would just check him in. He didn't even know he was going to Ireland until he landed in London, He didn't know he was going to London either. Like, it was like a surprise every airport. Just like fun shit. I just love to provide experiences for people. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You hit my heart there a little bit. I think about my boys, right? And I think about, how they, my son went to a leaders conference a year or two ago. He read out the winning tickets for raising money for Operation Smile. And I told him he had to be there in his little shirt and tie, take notes. And I was going to a U.S. soccer game that night, a World Cup qualifier. This is a year or two ago. But I've seen your son at R&R and at the different events we have. And I'm sure he's like my kids, like, where's team night tonight? Where's team night? Can I go?
Yeah. Well, now he plans it because he works at the company. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know he's working for you now.
Yeah. So he plans it. In fact, we just did one last night. But don't forget, he promoted me. I mean, my child at 8 years old was raised up to a podium in front of, I think there was like 6,000 people and said, "Look, I'm going to introduce you to my mommy, Holly Clark." Talk about losing your mind, since I didn't know that was happening. But I wouldn't even talk to a stranger. And he's like, let me talk to 6,000 people. Like, I just think that we've done we are doing great stuff for our kids. Whatever they choose to do with their lives, they choose to do with their lives. But like, they are introduced to so many things that I was not privileged to be introduced to.
100%. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Love it. Holly, any final thoughts? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Any final thoughts? I think, most of us are, and I believe that entrepreneurship is for everybody and not for everybody all at the same time. And I just think, and I just had this conversation with my son and his buddy, but don't limit yourself on what you've seen in your life, and don't limit yourself on what you think you don't want, all of that stuff. Just think about, like, you have so many opportunities in front of you. And if you're just getting started, like, educate yourself. And I'm really glad I was put around highly successful people early in my 20s and exposed myself to, like, wait a minute. So it's not about having the nice ski boat. It's about having the boat that's going to take me to Martha's Vineyard every weekend. Like, it's like that. And so, don't cap yourself in freaking anything that you do, and then be willing to change to get those things. That's my
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today. Holly, hang tight. For anyone that's joining us live, obviously, again, please subscribe. Have an awesome Friday. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.